This episode is sponsored by Grammarly. Oh, it's Halloween, which means monsters. And what better monster to talk about than the biggest one of them all? Your mom, Godzilla. But which one? Well, I asked on Patreon and you voted for Shin Godzilla, and I can see why. It is the most critically acclaimed Godzilla film since the original. It is both a technical masterpiece and an emotional impactful one for the Japanese public. The impressive CG that emulates the miniature look flawlessly, creating haunting imagery that recalls real-life events, from earthquake and tsunami, World War II firebombing, nuclear contamination, to cooling a nuclear reactor in meltdown. It is a masterpiece, and I didn't like it. And it's all because of one fundamental, critical problem. Problem being how Japan is defined in this movie. Specifically, let me ask you this question. If every civilian in a country died, does that country still exist? In Shin Godzilla, a never-before-seen giant creature dubbed Godzilla attacks East Coast Japan. Due to the extreme inefficiency of the Japanese government, the creature destroys chunks of Tokyo without much resistance. The plot centers around a young politician who must swim his way through the bureaucracy and devise a plan to save Japan from both Godzilla and the US threat of nuking Tokyo should Japan fail to save itself. It's a bold new angle for the series, focusing almost solely on the politics of Japan amidst a disaster. It is no secret that Shin Godzilla is a metaphor for the real events of the Tohoku earthquake and the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear disaster. It mocks the Japanese government for failing to respond quickly in times of crisis. All they do is have meetings, and if something goes wrong, they move to another room and do another meeting.
2時間今日あっても初期対応が至らず残念です。
Yet at the same time, it is also familiar. The title screen is a deliberate callback to the original movie. In ways, Shin Godzilla is a very straightforward remake. Much of its imageries are taken directly from the OG, even the timing matches. But they have one critical difference that makes it inferior in my eyes. When you think of Godzilla's rampage, what do you see? In the OG, Godzilla breaks through the military barrier and uses his atomic breath to set the city ablaze, killing everyone in a brutal demonstration of power. Even if you never saw a Godzilla film in your life, you probably guessed that. In Shin Godzilla, the Big G also walks right through the military, sets the city ablaze, destroying everything. During the attack in the OG, we see a mother and her children cornered by Godzilla. It's depressing and disturbing. Minutes later, we see a group of reporters being killed. With OG Godzilla being a symbol of nuclear weapons and by extension, war, civilian deaths are presented as emotionally upsetting events. Every soul lost in this war is impactful. Every soul living is suffering. In fact, it is the suffering of the people communicated through the singing of a choir that gives a scientist the motivation to kill Godzilla. So, how does Shin Godzilla translate these scenes into the 21st century? Well, it doesn't, because these moments are gone from the film. Instead of living, breathing human beings being impacted by the event, civilians are now a faceless populace. Shin Godzilla is uninterested in any human beings outside of the government. OG Godzilla shows the aftermath of the attack as traumatic. Shin Godzilla shows the aftermath as life as usual. When Godzilla causes a tunnel to collapse, you don't see the person being trapped. When Godzilla destroys Tokyo with his atomic beam, you don't see the people being killed. And the implication for this is uncomfortable. Before we continue, I'd like to take a minute to thank our sponsor for this video, Grammarly. Being a Chinese immigrant, writing for this channel is not easy. That's why Grammarly has been an essential part of this channel's creative process since the beginning. Grammarly is a digital writing assistant that works right from your browser. Simply download and install, and it's ready to go. The free version can help you spot grammar mistakes, which is amazingly useful for someone like me who speaks English as their third language. On top of that, Grammarly Premium offers additional features like Clarity AI, which rewrites full sentences to improve clarity, vocabulary suggestions, which helps you find the right words, and even formatting suggestions, making your writing that much easier to understand. With that, I can focus on writing my ideas, expressing myself, and not worry about poor communication. Go to grammarly.com/accented, sign up for a free account, and get 20% off Grammarly Premium today. Improve your writing with a digital writing assistant. Give Grammarly a try today. If every civilian in a country dies, does that country still exist? The OG made it clear that when Japan is attacked, when those in power fail to act, the ones who suffer the consequences are always the innocent civilians. For OG Godzilla, the people are the country. Shin Godzilla doesn't share this sentiment. As previously mentioned, Shin is deathly allergic to showing civilians. When the government officials visit the area of destruction, lives lost are not mentioned or shown at all. Instead, the film focuses much more on the property damage, the military losses, the economic impact. Unlike OG, where politicians and the military serve the public, in Shin, government officials are there to manage the public.
To
the politicians, civilian lives are treated as a resource. In other words, when the characters say they want to save Japan, they aren't saving the people at all costs. They are saving the land, the economy, the infrastructure. The definition of Japan is the system. Civilian lives are just part of the machine. Small losses are acceptable and can be repaired. When facing civilian deaths, the response from our main character, and thus the film, is cold and uncaring. Dude, the people are dying. But there is one death that emotionally affected our main character. When Godzilla sets Tokyo on fire, instead of showing civilian deaths, Godzilla kills the Prime Minister. Suddenly, the loss of a major figure in the system feels like defeat. This is where it starts to get uncomfortable. This favoritism towards authority figures can also be seen in the military scenes too. The higher your rank, the more the film focuses on you, whereas frontline soldiers are always faceless, nothing more than part of the war machines. It's like a war movie where you don't see the soldiers. It's like a disaster film where you don't see the civilians. The film is only interested in those in power. Added with its fetishization of military equipment, the call for greater government autonomy, and the speech that sounds almost like "some of you may die," it's no wonder why people think this is an authoritarian right-wing propaganda. And in the context of Japanese politics. Now, I want to make it clear that Shin Godzilla is not a right-wing movie. What you see here is likely an unfortunate coincidence. Shin Godzilla's primary director, Hideaki Anno, known for his Evangelion series, is famous for his love for giant machines and urban infrastructures. Even within Shin Godzilla, his passion for machinery doesn't stop at military equipment. And really, if he's into militarism, the Japanese and US Army wouldn't be so utterly useless. Similarly, the film's disinterest in civilian lives is because, well, Anno hates humanity. In his Godzilla, civilians are stupid animals who form cults to worship Godzilla. The first time we see civilians, they are shown enjoying the disaster like idiots. The bumbling politicians really aren't that much better. Even the call for greater autonomy, for Japan to stand up against US bullying, isn't a bad message in and of itself. It is true that the inefficiencies of the Japanese government led to the death of many during the Tohoku earthquake. The desire to change that is understandable. But when all these elements come together, the lack of civilian representation, The emphasis on the authority figures, the love for military equipment, the call for Japan to rise up, it becomes extremely appealing to the ultra right-wing nationalists, an ideological group who calls for Japan to rise again. And it just so happened that in their eyes, the glory days aren't the Meiji period or the Edo period, but the period where Japan was invading the rest of Asia. Yikes. But no, my problem with the film lies somewhere else. As previously mentioned, Shin Godzilla is a metaphor for Tohoku earthquake and Fukushima Daiichi nuclear disaster. Godzilla is this force of nature never before seen, tearing Japan apart from its foundation while the government fails to take action. The problem is, Fukushima is not purely a natural disaster. Sure, at magnitude 9.0, the earthquake was the biggest in Japan's recorded history, but it's far from the only large earthquake to hit Japan. The entire country of Japan lies in an active seismic zone. Earthquakes are a common occurrence. If Godzilla represents the Tohoku earthquake, then in the film's universe, Japan would be attacked by a smaller kaiju once a couple of years, which would make a kick-ass movie. If Godzilla represents the danger of nuclear energy, then Japan would already know the existence of kaiju. The government shouldn't only be criticized for failing to take action, the government should have been criticized for lack of preparation.
総理、改めて提言いたします。やはり原因は巨大不明生物である可能性があります。各省庁の検討を願います。
The film alludes to it, but doesn't address it. Unlike the emergence of Godzilla, people in and outside of Japan have foreseen the possibility of an earthquake-induced nuclear disaster in the country. Warnings were made and ignored. The power plant wasn't designed to withstand a tsunami on a scale much smaller than that of the Tohoku earthquake. Numerous warnings were given, additional precautions were requested, no actions were taken until it was too late. Japan wasn't attacked. Japan was put in danger by its own governmental failure. The Tohoku earthquake and tsunami killed over 15,000 people, with 2,200 more deaths from evacuations due to the nuclear disaster. Not a single soul lost in this tragedy is reflected in this film. No person were at fault for willingly jeopardizing the lives of thousands of civilians. In not a single instance does this film show sympathy for the helpless people who truly suffered. So many elements from the OG film were included, yet the one most critical aspect is left out. The voice of the people is entirely missing, and that's just not right. This is why I don't like Shin Godzilla. It's a shame because I want to love it. With the haunting and terrifying imagery, the film could have served as an important piece to let the world learn from Japan's mistakes. It takes a small and unique idea, the idea to explore the politics of a kaiju attack, and show us a great, self-contained story from a singular, razor-sharp focused point of view. Yet it is this fundamental idea that makes me feel uncomfortable. The exclusion of the victim in a disaster story rubs me the wrong way. In any other context, it wouldn't have been a problem for me. But no film exists in a vacuum. Since this film has the intention of paralleling real-life events, I think it's fair to judge it by its real-life responsibilities. But, that's just my opinion.